All right, part 2 today with Martin Rickman. Let's answer some more Cavs post-All-Star break questions on a new Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. That promo code is Locked On. All right, we have Martin Rickman, head honcho, everything over at Diamond Uproxx. Check out his new Substack as well. And we have Evan Dammarell, my wonderful co-host, my partner in crime over there, looking great in what feels like 8K. Honestly, looking good over there, buddy.
I'm trying.
How many
my
K
best,
are we
man.
getting to, Evan? What do you think the maximum amount of K we can get to is?
For you, like 12? Can we get you to 12?
Let's go for 12. Yeah, 12 is a good number. Like
Okay.
that.
That's a lot of K.
In honor
That's a
of
lot of K, yeah.
the GOAT Tom, let's go 12K.
Have you seen
you are.
it yet?
Yeah, you see
I
80
have
for
not.
Brady, Evan?
I did not yet. No, it's after going through this, not the slog, but the list of best picture nominees, just the ones I haven't seen yet. I'll add a 80 for Brady to the list, just as
Yeah, it's got to be up there. It's got to be at least near All Quiet on the Western Front, man.
Double feature Banshees of Inisherin and 80 for Brady. Let's go. Let's go. That'd be a really weird day. That'd be a really weird day. I'm going to be thinking about this rest of the night. All right. Question number 1 here today. How good can Evan Mobley be right now? Here's why I ask this. Here's why I put this up on this list. He's already really good, and I think the last 6 weeks has been a level up for Evan Mobley.
I will say that's quite the hot take to say Evan Mobley's very good, but proceed. I'm interested to see where you go with this.
I wish I could.
Only the strangest takes on Locked On, guys.
Look, Evan, you're despicable.
Well, here, Chris, I have a question for you. Do people
Okay.
understand how good Evan Mobley?
No,
That's the
that is
thing.
no. People do
I
not.
was
I think
setting
he's
you up for that.
no.
Thank you, Martin,
Martin just did it better
I
than you.
logged
though, is
it and
the-
Martin jammed it home, so
Yeah,
Chris
Martin-
can just go on a tirade. Go for it.
Okay, look. People do not understand that Evan Mobley is already on his superstar path. They do not understand that this guy is already an all defense level player who can do anything you want him to do defensively, whose offensive game is growing up in front of our eyes. He has that little fade post move now that he did not have 6 months ago. His handle is still a little bit loose, but he can get to the lane. He's finishing at the rim. He's getting to the line. The last month, he's averaging up near 20 points a game. His efficiency is up. He's doing everything better. He might already be the third best player on this team. And Jared Allen is a legitimately good player. And Evan Mobley might already have snuck ahead of him. I kind of might have him there based on how the season has gone. If Evan Mobley, the whole key to this Cavs group is, to me, long term, is centered on Evan Mobley. I think if he gets to where he can be, maybe it is still publicly Donovan Mitchell's team or Darius's team or whatever. But the best version of this era of the Cavs will be if Evan Mobley is the best player on the team and dominating on both ends of the floor. He has that potential to do that, and it could happen to some degree this year. If he could be one of these breakout guys that keeps leveling up and up and up and has a big playoff moment in a big series or something, and that helps take this team to another level. I think right now, if he hits whatever his max is this year, it unlocks so much for them as far as what the ceiling on this team could be. He's that special. He's already that good. Let's see where it goes.
Question for you, and then Evan, you can answer this. Okay. I guess it's for both you guys. Does he need a 3-point shot to reach that level? Do you think he needs to shoot 33% from the corner or whatever? I guess 33% overall, but higher from the corner for him to unlock that? Or can he be a superstar even if he can't shoot jumpers?
I think there's a pathway to make that happen, and I think it's an uncomfy conversation maybe you have down the line with regards to Jared Allen's future at the team, and you make Mobley, you just assume he continues to bulk up and grow and become more comfortable playing the 5, and you find a way that a stretchier big to put next to Evan Mobley that kind of does some of the rim protection stuff. So i.e. NBA 2K my player. But to Chris's point, yeah, I'd say he is quietly emerging as the third best player on this team. And this Cavs team will hit their apex as well, with Evan Mobley being the best player. I think that's the Duncan-esque comparison you can really make with him, where like, yeah, he may not stuff the stat sheet like Tim Duncan does, but he can flat out just dominate you if you need him to. But also he's very comfortable with like letting one of his stars, like in Duncan's case, it's Manu or it's Tony Parker. Just kind of like in this case, like for parallels here, it's Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell, like just dominate the shooting opportunities in the offensive game at times, because he knows that his teammates can do that, and he can then mitigate and focus his energy on the defensive side of the ball and just be that two-way elite player that he is. But like, you're watching his offensive game grow, and we had you on, Martin, when the Cavs first acquired Donovan Mitchell to talk about this. Like, getting Donovan Mitchell's kind of given Evan Mobley like a bigger runway to develop his offensive game and get more comfortable with it as well. And I think you're starting to see, to Chris's point, like that start to emerge a little bit. And to hop back to yesterday's episode, like Cavs fans are incredibly impatient, I think, sometimes too. Like it's like Isaac Okoro, like you're starting to see the fruits of the labor from Cavs player development, or just like Okoro's labor as well. And you're starting to see it as well with Evan Mobley, or like offensively, he's looking more comfortable too. But it's interesting to think like how good he can be, because it's hard to really put a cap on it, nor do you really want to. But like, it's tantalizing to kind of just try and put in perspective, like, holy cow, the Cavs are going to be building around a very cerebral defensive big guy who can do a little bit of everything out there. Like, he's still one of the best isolation defenders in the NBA, and he's, again, a power forward who is in the second year of his NBA career, and like, the sky's the limit for his potential. But to your question, the 3-point shooting one is a fair one. You would like to hope that he becomes more of a plus shooter out there. He's certainly becoming more comfortable taking those shots, which is encouraging if you're Cleveland, but he never was that with Southern California. But he also just does so many different things offensively that unlock the Cavs in so many different ways, whether it's passing or whether it's just like the mid-range floater, or he's kind of has like a little bit of a fader at times too. Like there's ways that Mobley can be impactful on offense where it just mitigates the need for him to be like Bosch, like where he's able to hit 3-pointers at a consistent clip if you kick it out to him, if he's just like trailing, whether he's trailing on the fast break or just a guy who like flares out to the perimeter in a pick and roll scenario.
Yeah, I think my biggest worry again comes back to what we discussed in yesterday's podcast, which is that I think the lack of another backup big is what really hurts in this instance as well. I would have loved to have seen a fully formed, healthy, like first half of last season Kevin Love in a lot of rotations where Mobley's playing the 5, because he is so good down there, and he is switchable, and he is so impactful, and he gobbles everything up down there in a way that is like legitimately frightening. But they don't have that. I mean, I guess you could play Dean at the 4 and play Mobley at the 5 right now if you trust Dean. I don't know that that's the plan, but I think that's a scenario where they need to kind of try to tinker with that, because like you said, when I look at where the Cavs can get better long term, and this is not like, this is one of those situations where I might go full Windy and say like, don't aggregate me, but I think the easiest path to this team becoming what they're going to be long term would be trading Jared Allen in some form or fashion, not because I want to, but because the salary cap is the salary cap. And when you look at needs, Evan Mobley kind of gives you the ability to go look elsewhere for talent, and Jarrett could lead to you getting a wing that would then unlock the rest of it for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. I'm not saying they should do it. I just think you may be in a tough position, and you may have tough conversations if this team gets as good as they're going to be. And I think Mobley gives you the luxury of that, where that he could play the 4, he could play the 5, he could play the 3 if you really wanted him to, but he's not hitting those shots yet. I mean, defensively, he can play the 3 right now. Like, I feel fully confident.
He's going to in the playoffs. Like, he's going to. If they play Miami in round 1, he's going to defend Jimmy Butler. If the Nets had stuck around, he might have defended Kevin Durant. Like that's where this is headed with Evan Mobley.
Well, and it didn't matter.
Get that superstar
in the Rising Stars game, he destroyed literally everyone who was on the court. I mean, that's the thing that's like surreal to me is Paolo's out there, and Paolo's going to win Rookie of the Year, and Paolo's very, very good and is better than I think anyone expected him to be right then. Like he's NBA ready to be a superstar. It's awesome. That being said, the best player in the Rising Stars game for the second straight year was Evan Mobley. Like to a level where I'm like, why isn't he an all-star? But the reason is because he's the 3rd or 4th best player on the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are the 3rd or 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. But that's just when in a like one-on-one, like archetype, create a player conversation, if you take Mobley off the Cavs and put him on literally any NBA team, he's good. Like, he's in that situation where they started talking about, like, whoa, what do you do with OG Anunoby? Like, you can plug and play him anywhere. Well, Evan Mobley's way better than OG is by a lot, and he can fit on any NBA team. The issue is that because he doesn't have splashy offensive numbers, people forget just how good he is and impactful he is on the court. And I think the Cavs have a few guys that are that way, where they're like really good NBA players, but they're maybe not guys that get NBA Twitter riled up until you get those weird graphics where people's faces are on them. Like, there's a graph X, Y, and literally in the top right quadrant, no matter what, Evan Mobley's always in it. And you're like, wow, that's crazy. That guy's 21 years old. Maybe he shouldn't be in the same conversation as Jokic and Bam and all these guys every single time, and then not be brought up as a guy who should be considered a superstar. It's like kind of surreal, but that's fine. Like, if people want to sleep on him, that's going to be a quiet driver for him, because he doesn't seem to be the type to say, like, I'm fine in the West or whatever. Like, he just has his head down, is continuing to get better. And they had a path in place for him to develop him at the rate in which they're developing him. And I think long term, that's going to be the best possible solution for him. And yeah, like you mentioned, Evan, we did talk about that runway. And the thing was, it was a knock on Mobley because he was sacrificing to integrate Don. That's just how selfless he is as a basketball player. That's one of those things that goes such a long way for me, especially in an era of superstars where a lot of the time these guys don't fit. Mobley would fit anywhere, and he's going to figure out a way to contribute. And like, for me, that is so immeasurably great. I love that.
Yeah. And to your point on that as well, JV Bickerstaff did say, like, a lot of guys that are young coming out of college, they're drafted in a top 5 situation, they're expected to put up a ton of shots for a bad team. Mobley's kind of put in a little bit of an unprecedented situation. I think he was the catalyst for the Cavs being good last year, but he was perfectly comfortable with not like leading the Cavs in shots or just slopping up a bunch of counting stats offensively that doesn't lead to wins, because he's more hyper fixated on doing what's best for the team. And I think, again, that's just a rare maturity streak you don't see in a lot of young guys. And it does certainly make him endearing to you as just like someone who observes this team, or just anyone who like wants to check out the Cavs play.
Yeah, that's coach's son stuff, right? I mean, that's just how he is. And the thing is, like, you put him out there as the number one option, which did happen. What was that game, like late December, early January, where everyone else was hurt and Mobley was out there? Then he goes and scores 40. Like, that's the thing. He could do that. He just does. He knows they don't need it most of the time. If anything, I wish that, like, Darius and Don would kind of be like, hey, you're that good. Please, like, just be that good more often, so that it takes some of the pressure off the ISO ball. Because when they get him moving and flaring, like, oh my gosh, it's so fun to watch him, especially with how he's able to attack mismatches and get on the run. Like, Mobley just is such a fascinating player to me, because he's already like so perfect for today's NBA. And if he does one or two things differently, he becomes like, you know, it's like when you can choose which evolution you want in Pokemon. Like, I don't think the Cavs even know which version of like Evan, like Mobley, Bulbasaur they want him to be. And I think that's why they're being a little bit more cautious with it.
This is Evan Cat. This is just Evan Catnip. Like, this is Evan and our producer Catnip, just like Pokemon references right now.
It's good stuff. I'm happy with it. So yeah, it's
right. Yeah, Evan's tearing up. All right, we're gonna go to break. Come back. Next question will be: is the Cavs offense good enough to win as much as they'd like to this year? We'll talk about that. But first, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Look, PrizePicks is, all you got to do is 2 to 5 players, and if you go score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you win. You can win 10 times your money in any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes the NBA, the NFL when it's in season, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, and much, much more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Offers safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Okay, back here, Locked On Cavs podcast. Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell have Martin Rickman, the God, with us. Okay. Got to take that PrizePicks down. So here's one of the things I've been, when I'm looking at the numbers with the Cavs and I'm thinking about like the case for them to be like a real title contender right now and to make a real run in the East beyond like maybe get to the conference finals. The biggest pause that I have is the offense. The net rating suggests this is like a very, very good team. The defense is elite. I have no doubt that that's going to hold up when everything does matter. What I do think and wonder is the offense is 10th when it's adjusted for strength of schedule. It is 9th when you factor out garbage time. That's very good. That is a step up. Mitchell has been awesome, all that stuff. It puts them ahead of the Bucks and the Clippers, two teams I think are to varying degrees title contenders, but those teams are having weird seasons. It is only 0.3 worse per 100 possessions worse than Philly. Historically, like offenses more often than not need to be a little bit higher than this to win the title. But maybe the calculus of this team is different. I think it ultimately is a little bit different. And I think offense in the summer will be the side of the ball they probably try to upgrade in some way. That would be my assumption, that they try to find offensive pieces JB Bickerstaff can trust and will play like 20, 25 minutes a night, and you coax more offense out of that. And as Mobley takes a step forward and everything. But is this offense right now good enough for them to make a run to, let's say, the Eastern Conference Finals and push a team like Boston or Milwaukee when everything is on the line?
Evan, I'll let you field this first because I'm curious what you have to say here.
So I think the trust factor does play a huge part in this because I know we talked about how like it's okay if Cedi Osman gets phased out of this rotation, but there are times where like you question some of the calls JP's made. Like Chris had mentioned, JP Bickerstaff going to Lamar Stevens versus Isaac Okoro. Like that's a defensive thing, but also just like offensively, like there were questionable calls where JB maybe leans on his guys a little bit too much. That guys that play defense, and Chris and I joke a lot on this show. Like if you play defense, that is the fast track to get minutes in JP Bickerstaff's rotation. And also you have to just kind of look at it. Like there's like, as like Cedi Osman, maybe Danny Green starts to make more of an impact as he's healthy too. But like the offense, I do have questions on whether it can hold up just come playoff time, just because the playoffs are such a different beast compared to the regular season. Like this is a best of 7 series where the opposing coach is going to zero in and hit the pressure points that make you most uncomfortable if you're Cleveland. And also it's the fact that the Cavs have never really played in the playoffs before. Like sure, there's Donovan Mitchell and Karis LeVert and Jared Allen have a cup of coffee in the play, or 9 games, I should say, rather, in the playoffs as well. And like Danny Green has a very extensive body of work. But like when you look at Garland, you look at Mobley, you look at Okoro, you look at guys that are just like key pieces in this rotation going forward, Dean Wade as well. Like they don't have that experience, and like they could kind of have like an oh crap moment where they're down 2-0 because they kind of just come out really flat, and then the opposing team just zeroes in on that. So I don't think the defense will ever be an issue like Chris has alluded to. I don't think the offense will be a huge problem for the rest of the regular season, but I am curious to see how it functions and how it flows just come playoff time. And like, let's say they draw Miami in the first round, like Eric Spoelstra, and is a very good tactical coach. And then you have the Heat, who have a lot of good defensive personnel that match well with the Cavs.
And Kevin Love now to space, which is these two teams, we'll talk about this in segment 3, but the Cavs play Miami twice in like 2 weeks in South Beach. Can't wait. Biggest games.
Let's say like the Nets somehow stay alive and the Cavs are like 4 or 3 and the Brooklyn's 5 or 6. Like, the Nets have a ton of wing type players that the Nets can just kind of throw at Cleveland, similarly to how Toronto just defends the Cavs really well because they have a bunch of 6'8" dudes who can defend and also shoot at times too. So I have my questions, and I think I just need to see them actually play in the playoffs and just not make assumptions. But they're two very different creatures at the end of the day, and you're playing to get experience. You're playing to obviously make it past the first round and get into the second round. Again, I talked about this on yesterday's episode as well, where we could just look at how the Cavs could like crack into the Eastern Finals. And then let's say they draw Boston and Milwaukee at that point. It's a lot more tricky then, but I'm curious to see just how this goes. But it's a lot of it is just the offense has always kind of been vanilla under JB Bickerstaff. The Cavs assistant coaches are really focused on just player development. And sometimes they have like offensive and defensive input too, but they're more so focused on the player development point, and it's going to be defensive grinders. And I think the Cavs are just more than happy with mucking things up and making this into a rock fight versus turning into a shooting competition, because that's just not how JB is comfortable out there at times when he's just kind of trying to game plan on the fly.
Yeah, I think for me, the key to all of this is Ricky Rubio. They just have not actually utilized him to a level where I think they want to. And that's not because he can't. I think they just were being very cautious with him. But when you look at what Rubio is able to do to make this team better offensively in such a natural and free-flowing way, there is so much of a need for that moving forward. And I think it's just going to be something we're going to see here in these last few games before the playoffs. And then you're going to see a lot more of it in the playoffs. I've maintained from the jump that he's their sixth most important player, and he should be the first guy off the bench. The problem was that with him being injured and them trying to ease him back, you got what we saw out of Karras. The thing, though, that I struggle with is that Karras really is a substitute for Don or Darius. All three of them playing their game in the same game typically leads to a lot of the weird basketball that Cavs fans don't enjoy. I think Karras is best as the second or third guy off the bench in replacement for Jetty, Lamar, any one of those guys. And I think he should still come in before Danny Green, but you need him focused on defense other than giving up 4-point plays. And you need him trying to spot up and then cut when their back door is open or when you're able to curl off of when a double comes for either Don or Evan. Like, he's so good at that they need to tell him and continue to reinforce that over and over and over again, that when you're in the game, in the playoffs, and we're full strength, we don't need 40 out of you. We need you to lock down. We need you to maybe get 10 points, maybe a couple more, rebound, because he's a really good rebounder. And then just like be a fulcrum for a lot of these release valve options when the pressure gets on these guys, because he can be so creative. But when he is just ball stopping and then Darius ball stops and then Don ball stops, it doesn't, the offense does lose a lot of its flow. It never loses flow when Ricky Rubio's on the court. So I think that's the thing for me, is I want to see whether or not they ramp up Rick's minutes moving forward. And if they do that, I think you're going to see a lot more offensive creativity. And I think you're just going to see the offense naturally look better heading into the playoffs. And I'd be a lot more comfortable with him being the first guy off the bench than anyone else. Now, don't get me wrong. That's nothing against Dean, Karras, or even Danny, who I do think are going to be valuable contributors in the playoffs. But I just think when we talk about the offense becoming what it should be, it starts and ends with him.
I agree. Rubio is a swing. He's a swing piece. He's one of the swing pieces of the season, and we don't know if he's going to be able to play more than 25. How much do they kind of hold him, because they did sign the multi-year deal? Do you push all your Rubio kind of thing now? Like, how does he feel coming off of the knee? Like, he's still very much capped at 20 minutes, and does that change in the next 20 games? And then he's playing every other day if you get into the later rounds. So it's going to be kind of an ongoing thing.
But I think it has to be the plan. He hasn't played a back-to-back yet. So what are you saving him for if it's not that? Yeah,
in the playoffs, I think it's just going to be all hands on deck, and he's probably okay. It's just I think until then, it's probably kid gloves a little bit, just because that's how it's been so far. All right, let's go to one more break. We'll come back. Last question of the day will be, can the Cavs take advantage of a relatively weak schedule down the stretch? But first, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Look, if you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all those fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. Look, you get through the holidays and you want to eat healthier, you got to try Built. Healthy is actually tasty with Built. Built Bars are so good because they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. Most bars only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And I don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been telling you to go to Built.com and order your bars there. But now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. At Walmart, get a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and get a 13-bar box with hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. Thank Evan and I later. Also, they have a new Frosted Animal Cracker flavor out, so check that out too. All right, last segment, Locked On Cavs. All right, guys, Cavs schedule. 4th, according to the Tankathons, just based on their just winning percentages the rest of the way. Cavs have the 4th easiest schedule the rest of the season. This is not to say that there aren't hard games. March 6th through the 10th, for instance, they had home versus Boston on the 6th, and then they play twice in Miami on the 8th and then the 10th. The Cavs will be playing in Miami against a good, tough Heat team that just beat them in Cleveland not too long ago, but they also have to beat the South Beach Flu in March. That's some tough looks for those guys. They get Boston again on March 1st. They have Philly again on March 15th, which will be a massive game in Cleveland, and you see how that looks. That has a lot of tiebreaker seeding implications there, but they have a lot of very easy games the rest of the way that if they take advantage of, they give themselves a really good shot, even with Philly having some games in hand, to make a run. So this isn't so much of like, will they do this? But guys, to me, this feels like a really big opportunity to, yes, you got to navigate some tough games, but you have a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. If you want to have your best chance possible of getting to like the 3 seed, this is you have a path to do it. You absolutely do.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting to think just because all these games have weight for the Cavs, but they have the ability to go on these runs like this. They have the ability, and they've showcased the ability to take care of business against not bad teams, but opponents that just aren't to the same caliber of like the Phillies, the Bostons, the Milwaukees, and the Miamis of the world. Like you said, the South Beach Flu, and just 2 games in 4 nights, I want to say, against the Heat are tough. And then you have to do the same in Charlotte and then the same in Brooklyn down the line as well. Like, it's interestingly structured the rest of the schedule for the Cavs. I think them having to go through the thick of it early in the season certainly helped a lot for them, just because now they don't have to do this weird mad dash. Not saying they will, but like this weird mad dash that they did last year, just to try and like squeak into the playoffs, and you watch them slide into the play-in tournament instead. So the Cavs are kind of set up in a really nice spot right now where they could realistically, it's going to be a flip-flop between 3 and 4. I think that game against Philly in March is really going to have a lot of weight to it, just because I think the winner of that game is probably going to ultimately end up as the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, but we'll see how it goes. There's obviously a lot of things that could break either way for either team, but it's going to be kind of fun to make these games just have a lot of meaning and impact down the stretch for Cleveland.
Martin?
Yeah, I think just in general, the 3 seed should be the goal. And if you shoot for 3 and end with 4, then that's what happens. But you need to take advantage. And the Cavs typically are pretty good at taking advantage of beating the lesser teams in the NBA, especially when you look at teams finally deciding they're not in it. They're not going to play for the plan. Maybe they're going to tank for Wemby. Maybe they've had their own buyout guys, or they've shut guys down for the year. That's a situation where you've just got to take a winnable game and turn it into like a no-doubter win. Not one of these things where like you're playing the Warriors at home and no one's playing and you just let them beat you. Like, you've already given away all of those games this year that you are allowed to give away if you're a playoff contender. They've got to lock in. And if the plan all along was, again, like, let things happen, figure it out, like after the All-Star break, we'll be who we're supposed to be, then you've got to just like be that. There's no margin for error at this point, and you can't give any of these away. I just don't think there's any excuse at this point to lose to anybody things happen in the NBA. Every team's talented, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But if you're at full strength, you're going to need to like run through this schedule and try to beat as many of the good teams as you can, but lock in against the teams that are must-win games. And if that means like resting your starters or resting your stars against Miami, that's fine. If it means that you're going to then win the next 4. Like, I think what they did in the last 10 games before the break is exactly how I want them to approach the remainder of the season. They went 8-2. They like weren't getting too high or too low, and they took care of business. And I that if there is a switch to be flipped for the Cavs, I feel like they did switch it. I just hope that the All-Star break didn't like cause them to kind of lose focus a little bit. I don't know that I don't have any reason to believe that it would. It's just like one of those times where it's like, man, of course they finally click on all cylinders, and then we go to the All-Star break. I'm really curious to see what happens like coming out of it. This game against Denver is a really interesting test. Like, how do they look against probably the best team in the NBA? Do they compete? Do they go down 15 again against a good team? Like, they can't keep doing that. They can't. Yeah. So let's see. But if they beat Denver at home, I mean, you're going to finally start to hear again the same things. Are the Cavs legitimate playoff contenders? They just beat the best team in the West. They just beat the NBA MVP. Like, should we be taking the Cavs more seriously? Have we been too hard on JB Bickerstaff? Like, you know how these pendulum swings all the time with Cleveland fans.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, Evan. Like, everybody's so impatient, and then they tune in because they're like used to just focusing on Ohio State or focusing on the Browns, and then they're like, oh, well, the Cavs are the 3 seed right now. Like, maybe they're pretty good, and they expect that team to be dominant all the time, every night on the floor, and don't realize that it's an 82-game season, and sometimes you rest guys, and sometimes you just don't have it. This isn't like one game every Sunday, and it's a moratorium on the team every single win or loss. Like, and I'm not to say that the team doesn't care about any of that stuff. It's just now that we're getting close to crunch time, now that they are a playoff contender, now that we are having conversations about whether or not they're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, we're going to start to hear that stuff more and more and more. But it's a good problem to have because, boy, do I wish that people in Cleveland talked about the Cavs and the Guardians more often. So let's have them talk about it, and maybe they can figure it out along the way that, like, part of being an NBA fan is just taking the ride and looking at things in 10-game samples and not 1 or 2 game samples.
Yeah. Here's the first 6 out of the All-Star break. I think this is a fascinating mix of games. We'll end on this. Nuggets at home, Atlanta on the road, which is the second out of a back-to-back. But like, even if Atlanta gets a new coach bump, you got to beat the Hawks at this point. Raptors on Sunday. The Cavs are 0-3 against Toronto on the season, but Toronto's like, yeah, they have to beat Toronto. Like, and also just like beat a team that isn't good. Just like take care of it and beat the team that is not good. Then you have Boston on March 1st, the Pistons on March 4th, and then the Celtics again at home in the last matchup between those two teams on March 6th. And you get to the Heat games. And then you get into like some easier stuff. And from there, you know, you have the Hornets 3 times down the stretch. What a gift from the scheduling gods to get the Charlotte freaking Hornets 3 times down the stretch for Cleveland. You know, you have the Pacers in there. You have the Rockets again. Like, you have some very teams you should just absolutely crush and beat. But this first 6 games, you get Denver, who is probably the 3-time MVP and might win the championship this year. You get Atlanta, you get Toronto and Boston twice, and the Pistons. It is a good mix of really good teams. Like 3 games against legit title contenders, and then 3 games against teams I feel like you should beat.
And then it's a back-to-back against Miami, basically.
Yep.
It's one of those weird.
And then you get 2 and 3 days against Miami, and then you follow that up with 2 and 3 days against the Hornets.
Yeah, I think if you come out of that stretch 4-4, you feel really, really good about where the Cavs are. I'm going to be honest. Like, if you go 500 in those 8 games, that's a great place to be heading into the rest of the season. If you do better than that somehow, then I guess we're having me back on the show to talk about whether or not.
The whiplash from playing Miami twice in 3 days to the Hornets twice in 3 days is incredible stuff.
But just fully
That's
be prepared
incredible
for them to beat Miami twice and then lose that first game to Charlotte, and then everyone want to know what's wrong with the Cavs.
Yeah. That feels like a day where someone who will not be named is going to be like, Colin Sexton would have never lost this game, and I'll just like log off the internet forever and walk into Lake Erie.
You could have done that by now. You've threatened it plenty of times.
Yeah, you know, I did the Banshees of Inisherin thing and cut off my fingers, but I got them reattached. So, you know, we're living life.
It's after that aforementioned person tried to cut off your hands. So
yeah, spoilers for Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah, that was a serious Banshee spoiler, bro.
Look, man, like, come here. Like, next time it might spoil There Will Be Blood. If you haven't seen There Will Be Blood, then you're just like wrong. So anyway, let's end there. Martin, thanks so much for coming through. Tell everyone about, everyone knows Dime, but tell them about your new Substack before we get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good time as we celebrate the one of the most interesting legacy guys in the history of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Kevin Love. We all know that he's brought a lot of attention to mental health on the athletic side of things, and I'm like really proud of what he was able to do. But something I was doing for a long time was also being open and honest with my battles with depression, anxiety, body dysmorphia, some exercise-induced anorexia, which I think that maybe is the first time I've ever revealed that before. And just the fact that like being not okay is something I really, really believe in. And I just think we need to talk a lot more about those sorts of things in general. And I took all that time off Twitter. I took all that time off Instagram, off socials altogether to try to rebuild everything I've been trying to figure out in my life. And I'm not saying I have the answers, but I'm trying to solve them, and I think I'm beta testing that every day with myself. So I just decided at this point, there's no reason not to be accountable, and part of being accountable is journaling. And I just wanted to let people into some of the thoughts that I'm having. So I started a Substack called Progress Isn't Linear, and it's going to celebrate the wins and lessons that I'm going through on a day-to-day basis, maybe some tips and tricks, and maybe some stuff that's working for me, whether it's taking tart cherry juice for sleep or, using a steam room and meditating in the steam room, because that allows me to get a little bit more focused or create separation between my workday and my evenings. Like, there's little things I've been doing. So there's going to be a piece that hopefully comes out tomorrow if I have time, about just the importance of taking walks. So little things like that. I mean, probably some podcasts, maybe some interviews, getting in with people who've either been through it or are going through it or just are experts, and I'm not one, but that's what I've got going on. Otherwise, it's Dime 24/7. You guys all know where to find Dime. My team's amazing. I can't say enough about what Katie Heinel's doing. She was published in the New York Times last week. Robbie Callen's an absolute killer, and he got to write about Ludacris in the Fast and Furious franchise. Bill D's an absolute monster. Jackson Frank's doing great things. Mark Schiller's great. Austin's awesome. Brad Rowland's the king. You guys know him if you're around here.
Does Mark still has bad food takes? I'm a little,
terrible.
Mark's a little
absolutely
terrible
horrific food take. But he's a good night. He's a nice guy.
Yeah. Cleveland.
But anyway, that's what I got going on.
So here's just real quick, my feeling on Mark's food takes. I think it's just because he consumes so much basketball content, he just doesn't have the appetite for good food anymore. That's all it is.
Or it's just wrong. Like, it's also just like,
yes, he's also wrong, but I'm trying to be nice, Chris.
Not that long ago that French fries were bad. Like, it's not even that he likes things that other people don't like.
That's
think
true.
He doesn't like
you said didn't you say pasta was bad once? And I'm just like, how do you like pasta? That's that's anti-Italian. That is some anti-Italian discrimination, honestly.
I don't know.
Bill. Yeah. All right, that's gonna be it. We've gone off the rails. Evan and I'll be back with more soon. Thanks again to Martin for coming through. Everyone, be well. Check out Martin's Substack. I'll link it in the show notes below. Peace out, everybody.